I wanted to create a simple animation, and I do that in the engine. I want to be able to edit it in the future to make it better. And in this case, I wanted to do something with the wings where it throws some sort of magic ability, and I wanted to flip flop between both sides, sort of like a human punching, like doing a double punch, but instead the bird would do it with their wings. So let me just show you what I've got going, and then we'll hop into a new project and try to do this ourselves. So first, this is kind of where I'm at with my game. If I click a button, each wing does a little animation, and a ability is launched forward. Now this is one animation, not two, because I discovered a new feature to be able to mirror the animations in Unreal Engine. How I've gone about doing this was in Sequencer. I created the animation, and it's not the greatest or anything, and it definitely looks a little bit different in the final product because I'm blending in other animations. Again, this is very simple, crude animation, and I can come in and tweak this animation and make it even better without very much work at all. That being said, let me hop into a new project. Let's do this ourselves. So this is pretty much a cleared out project, nothing in here. First thing we want to do is add a character. Let's do the third person character. Make sure these settings are set up properly in maps and modes. We'll just use the standard game mode, actually the third person character game mode. So now if I hit play, we can run around as the third person character. I think the simplest will be to create a little punch animation. So to keep things a little bit organized, I'm going to create a new folder for my sequences. And because this is a character sequence, I will create a subfolder called character. And there's a couple ways to create a sequence. I think the easiest is up here, add a level sequence. And I'll look for my folder. And this is going to be, let's just say, character punch. And we can even do like R for like right arm. But this will be our only animation we create, and I'm going to use this for the left side as well. Hit save. So what we need to do first is get the mesh of the character. Let's try the standard Quinn. Plop her in there. Let's turn down that camera speed. With her selected, you can just go to add actor to sequence, and she will be at the top here because you have her selected. One thing with metahumans and the mannequins is they have a control rig, which is fine. That makes animating easier. Also, because this is going to be a linked animation that you want to be able to edit anywhere, possibly in any level, what I would recommend doing is you right-click, convert to spawnable, and now when the sequence goes away, Quinn is no longer in the level. Here's the outliner, the level sequence. We can actually delete the level sequence as well from the level. So this is a blank level, and if I open up my sequence, it spawns in Quinn at whatever the transform was. So I'll be able to load up the sequence in any level to edit it. Now, if I didn't do this and left it as possessable like this, now Quinn is still in the world, and if I go to a different level, then there's going to be a reference break. The level sequence won't find her, and it's going to mess some things up. So when it comes to linked animations where the character, you're going to have different levels for your game, and you want to edit these animations at any time, you definitely want it to be spawnable. That being said, moving on to a simple animation. First, I like to do this by showing time instead of frames. Um, so in this 30 FPS drop down, show time as seconds. Now I know exactly the time frame, and I'm going to make this a 1 second animation. So it's 30 frames, it's a 30 FPS animation. You can change that if you want, but I think for characters, you can leave it at as a 30 frames per second. Holding control in the mouse wheel, I can zoom into that block of time just to make it a little easier. So here we are. We have Quinn, we have our sequence. We're ready to animate a little punch. This is going to be different based on your type of character. The first one is a character that uses a control rig. If I select the mannequin body, it's showing me the control rig that has been set up by Epic Games, and we have these controls that we can click and drag around, and it's going to move portions of the body. So the first thing I want to do is create the default keyframes for everything. So I go to 0 and just hit this plus sign. It's going to add a keyframe for every single bone. And then what I like to do is copy them all, click and drag, Control C, go to the 1 second mark, Control V, and now I have it starts and ends at my default positions. This will give me a looping animation. Then I'll go perhaps to the midpoint and we're going to just block in the punch. And this is going to be the right side, so I'm only focusing on this right arm and some body movement. Now, one thing with this control rig that is helpful, if you search for IK at the top, you may want to turn on the arm IK switch. And I can just do it for the right side because that's the only one I will be animating, but it gives me this box. When you have this box, it's the IK, it has IK built in, so I can simply translate it and it moves the arm in a realistic manner. And you can rotate as well. So I want to use this to get the arm and hand in the position that seems logical. And usually you punch across your body, so it might be something like that. Now, I don't want to keyframe every single bone, so in this case, I'm just going to stick with the hand IK control and just keyframe that one. We do need some body twist in here. One thing I forgot to do is keyframe this switch here. So the arm IK switch, I need to add the keyframe in the beginning and at the end. That doesn't look very much like a punch, but you can see where we're going with it. Maybe the beginning, you coil back a little bit. And of course, having some sort of reference would be very helpful for this. That's a little better. And then we need some sort of follow through. Quick tip when it comes to animating rigs that don't have the control rig, you're going to want to animate only rotations. If you're animating bones directly, you're almost never going to want to translate the bones like this. Rigs are set up so that you animate rotations almost exclusively, unless you're a more advanced animator and you're doing something stylized where you want some, squeeze and stretch as part of the animation. If you want to keep everything how it was built in the rig, you just animate rotations. Okay, so that wasn't so bad. With a few keyframes and getting that body movement in there, closing the fist, it's looking all right. It's not the greatest, but this is where I'll stop for now. One thing with the hands, the green control points control all of the joints in the finger, so just affecting the one control point can close each finger, and that really helped it a lot. I also changed the timings a little bit. Instead of at the halfway point, the punch happens within the first third, something like that. And then the first and last frame are my default keyframes. I think that looks pretty good. It's a very generic, kind of a weak punch, but we can get away with it for now. This animation will be a linked animation, so it'll be linked to this sequence, and I'll be able to come back anytime in the future, add more keyframes, add more motion to it, make it more detailed, and it'll just update the animation sequence automatically without any additional work. So as I edit this sequence, it affects the animation for the character, which is very, very nice, as opposed to doing it in Blender or Maya, where you need to export the animation, import it into the system. Hopefully all the parameters were correct and it didn't mess anything up. This is such an easier workflow as long as you can animate it in here. So to do that, we want to right-click on Quinn, the skeletal mesh, and you do Create Linked Animation Sequence. And what I like to do in content is create an animations folder. You might want this under your character. It just depends how you plan to organize it. In animations, I can then create a character folder for my character animations. And this will be character punch. Just like R for right arm. This is similar to how I named the sequence. There's some settings here. I think overall you can just keep it default. And now we have an animation sequence. So if I was to close out of the sequencer, go to my character, let's find Quinn. And if I go to the animation module here, I should be able to find it. Here we go. There's my animation sequence. And it's just like any other sequence. You can mess with all the parameters. You can make it an additive animation if you want. If it's going to layer on top of other animations, you can do all the things you need to do. It's just like an animation sequence. If I decide I want to change something, we just go to our sequence, open it up, and let's just say, let's do something obvious. Maybe the head will rotate as you punch through, rotate off to the side or something. So now if I keyframe that, you can see over here, it updated automatically. So that's really nice. Again, rotate the head just to show you. If I keyframe it, hit save, and the head changes in the animation. So I can change this animation as much as I want very easily. So that's going to be it with creating the animation. Now I want to be able to mirror this animation for both sides of the body. In Unreal Engine, you need to do some setup, but it's very easy. Let me go to character folder. What we need to do is set up a mirror asset. I believe it's in animation, a mirror data table. And we're going to do it with, see, this one has UE4 in the path. This is the newer mannequin skeleton. Hit accept. So MD for mirror data, and we'll just do mannequin. When we open it up with the mannequin skeleton, it should be populated with quite a bit already. What it's doing is taking the left bone and pairing it up with the right bone of the same type, same name. This asset is set up in these settings here to be able to find all the left and rights and match them up. And it's set up here in the find and replace expressions, and Epic has already gone and added all this logic where it tries to find everything as much as possible. In this case, it even we have the root, pelvis, head. So I think this comes in, it's all set up and ready to go just by creating the asset. Now, one thing, you may not be using Epic's skeleton here, and it might not be as easy as this. Let me go into my game real quick, and I'll just show you what I had to do. Slightly different. The bone structure has rig L and rig R for left and right. And that mirror data asset wasn't set up to recognize that as left and right. So what I had to do before creating the asset, I had to go to project settings, and in animations, in engine animation, in the mirroring data here, I went all the way to the bottom and created two more expressions for rig R and rig L. So you can see rig R, replace it with rig L, and rig L, replace it with rig R. Now, when I create my asset for the skeleton, it finds all those bones and does what it needs to do. However, the logic to bring in the pelvis and the root was not there, so I had to add those manually. So if I was to create a new data table, this is how it comes over. So because I had set up the project settings with the new expressions, it found all of the left and right bones, but it doesn't have the root and the pelvis. So I had to enter those manually, and I just add a new row, and I went to the skeleton, copy bone name, paste it in, name, and it's the mirrored name is the exact same as well. And that was it. And then I hit the next one, copy name, and simply did that for the few bones that aren't left or right. So it was pelvis, then the rest are found already, then spine, then all the tailbones. I had to add those as well. The mirror table I'm using looks like this. You could see past the expressions, I added all these bones manually. So if your skeleton does not conform to Epic's skeleton, you may need to do just that tiny bit of work to get your mirror table set up. So now back in here, we have the mirror data asset set up for the mannequin. In the third person character, there should be an animation blueprint already for us to use. And it's in here, the animation folder, animation blueprint, Quinn. Let's just go in here and we'll modify this animation blueprint. This is a child animation blueprint of Manny. All right. So because it's a child of Manny, all the logic is here. Really, there's not much we're going to be doing in the event graph. It's going to be in the anim graph. So this is the third person character animation blueprint, and we want to be able to mirror the punch. When it comes to deciding how the animations are going to play, you have states and you have montages. A montage is played from a blueprint, possibly the character blueprint or an ability, and then it looks for a slot, like this default slot, and the montage will play from this slot. And anything before the slot is basically canceled out by the montage. The montage becomes like the current state of the animation, and then anything after it will affect the montage. So this control rig has IK built in, and it's going to place your feet on the ground from the montage. So So that's why this control rig is like the last thing to make use of IK. If you are creating an animation that's loopable and it's for like a state, let's say a swimming animation, a flying animation, running, falling, walking, injured, an attack state, like you're in fighting stance, those would go into a state machine, and they're animations that are continuously played while the character is in that state. It's not a one-off animation like a punch would be a montage, because it's not, you don't want it to be loopable. It's a one-off animation. So you have to decide, what is this animation you created? I created a punch, so it's going to be a montage, and we're going to decide a slot for it to go into. We want to go to Window, Slot Manager, and it came on my screen. It's here on the right side. It looks like they've already created an upper body. We can just, to show you how to create a new slot, you just hit Add Slot, and we'll do, you can just do like torso or whatever you want to do. They don't have a lower body, so let's do a lower body. So now I created a lower body slot. So what that means is, again, the slot is going to cancel out everything that's before it. So if I just right click and type slot, the only one that shows up is default slot, but if I click on it and go to details, I can then change it to what I want. So in this case, upper body. Upper body is the one we're going to play the punch animation into. What we need to do is cache the current pose at some point so that we can keep the lower body animation. This main state is where everything's coming out of. This is the main state of the character, the full animation. If I drag off of there and do cache, we can save what's coming out of there as a new pose. And this will be the main state cache. Then what we want to do is right click and use that cache. This is how you branch animations pretty much, is you cache them and then you can use them multiple times. So these are the same animation and you can put them through different nodes. We're going to do a layer by bone. Layer, drag off, layer, blend per bone. The base pose will be the main state. For testing, I want to drag in this running animation. I'm going to, the upper body slot will be the blend pose. I'm also going to drag in my punch animation as a test. And the alpha will be 1. So that means you'll get the full alpha on the blend pose. Another thing is, in the layer per bone, we're going to add an element here, and we're going to do the spine 3. And if we plug that in here and compile, this is how we look. And both of these animations, we want them to be looping. So that's kind of where it stands. Now it's blending the translations. So this blend, one way to correct it is to do the rotation blend. Check that, compile. Now things look how we would expect. We can punch while running, and we can punch while walking. So that's how that's going to work. So we want the main state to be the parent, and we're going to blend against that. I will need to do something like this. So now whenever we play the montage through the upper body, it's going to cancel out this main state of the upper body and blend it against the other copy of the main state, which is going to retain the lower body animation. We're blending it against one of the spine bones. We're blending the rotations, and that's basically going to allow us to only affect the upper body. If you wanted to do a lower body as well and only affect legs, if you had a kicking animation, remember we created the lower body slot, so this is where it would come in useful. You just add the slot and you can do lower body for the top one. This might require a little bit of tweaking, but this should allow a lower body and upper body for the most part. So now we wanted to mirror the animation. One extra node we can do, let's just do it right here for now. If you search for mirror, it finds the data asset that we had created. And if we chuck that in there, it's checked. So now he's mirrored. And when it's unchecked, he's not mirrored. What we're going to want to do is right click and create a variable out of the mirror. There's going to be a couple different ways we can toggle the mirror pose. So using this, let's set up the montage and start punching in the game. Going back to our animation, right click, create animation montage. Now we have a montage. Now we have to go to the third person blueprint and put in the input to be able to punch and play the montage. Normally you would set up an advanced input. I'll just use the debug key. So now I've set up some input so I can play this montage, but it's not going to work just yet. Oh, I forgot to plug in the mesh. So mesh, skeletal mesh. There we go. That should work now. If I go back to animations and find the montage, click on it. We want this to play in the upper body slot. So we're going to change that to upper body. It's going to stop playing, but if I close it and reopen it, it should work again. Let's just try that. And let's just see if this works. There we go. And I can punch while running, and it's got that half-second delay. That might be let's cut that down to 0.2. It's obviously not mirrored. So there's a couple ways you can do this with the mirror. One is the character blueprint. If you want it built into your ability, you can create a variable, mirror punch, and you can set it here. You might do a flip-flop, something like this. And you'll need to set it on both branches. So it's going to say start unmirrored and then mirror. So every time we press the ability, it'll flip-flop between the two sides. To get this working, we need to go into the animation blueprint, into the event graph. And we'll just do another part of the sequence here. This mirror here was from the variable we created earlier in the anim graph. So let's just remember we created this variable off of there. So now we're going to set it from the character blueprint. So we can just set that, and we want to get the character. So to get the variable, we need to change this to the third person character. All right. Change this to the third person character, change the character variable to the third person character, and now we should be able to get it. There it is. Get mirror punch. All right. Plug that into there. Now, this is not the most efficient way, and it's not how I would prefer to do it. I'm just showing one way it can be done. This is the most crude method. There are variables you'll be wanting to set from the character blueprint and reading them in the anim graph. So this is one way you could do that. This should work. Let's just check it out. So there it goes. And you can see it's pretty jarring how the legs are also mirrored. So we need to go to the anim graph and fix that. What we want to do is only mirror the top portion of the body. So we're going to play the montage, then we're going to mirror the montage, and then it's going to be blended with the lower body, and then it should look good. So that looks a lot better with the running animation. And standing still doesn't look good because there's no idle animation. The body's not moving any which way, so it doesn't look that great with just standing in place. But there we go. We're alternating punches, and we're using a single animation to do it, and that single animation, we can tweak it at any time and update it. So we're on the right path. However, I do not like this setup. Now I'm going to show you what I think is a better setup. It may not work for you, but let's just get rid of the mirror punch variable. Just get rid of it altogether. Keep it clean like that. And in the montage, what I want to do is create a notify. So if I right click on track 1, add notify, let's create a new one, and let's just call it mirror. And we're going to drag this all the way to the beginning. That should be all we really need. Save that. Back in the anim graph, we can now go to the event graph, get this out of there. We don't need that anymore. Remove that. So now we will not be updating this variable every single frame of animation, which is what happens in the update animation node here. We're going to do event anim notify. Let's look for mirror. There it is, anim notify mirror. So when this triggers, now we can do a flip flop, and we can do it like this. So every time that animation plays, it's going to alternate from one to the other. So now this is a little cleaner. It's not constantly updated. It's only triggering when that one anim notify triggers when you're playing this one montage. Because there's many montages and animations where you just won't need to read this variable. So this is probably a little better. And there it is. It's working with the anim notify. Now remember, we had the lower body as well if you wanted to do kicks and stuff. Let's just fix that as well. If you want to be able to create a kick animation, you're probably going to want to do something like this to be able to mirror that. So now we have our upper and lower body. Default slot will cancel all of this out. So any montage that's a full body animation, you can use default slot. Sometimes you might want to just use, the full body slot there. You could do the default slot here at the very end to cancel out IK and everything as well. So these are all slots you can play montages into. So if you play one to the default slot, it's going to be just that montage. No IK, keeping the feet on the ground or anything. Full body is a montage that affects the entire body. Maybe it's a dance animation, a victory animation, who knows? And the IK will keep the feet on the ground. Lower body only, torso and on down. Upper body, waist on up. You might want head animations looking around, so you may want to branch off further and create a head slot. So this is the beginnings of your anim graph. So that's going to be it for this one. Let me know what you think about it. Is this something that helped you out? Thanks for watching. Take care.